Welcome back, everybody. This is Sick World episode 3, I think. I'm probably going to stop numbering them because I'm going to lose track, but I wanted to just kind of briefly talk about the topic of mental health. I know we've kind of talked about the physical environment we live in and how it affects your body physically, but I wanted to, mental health is an aspect also that is going to affect your life and your health in a lot of ways. So I wanted to touch on that. I'm going to say this again. I'm not any kind of medical professional. I'm not a psychiatrist, not any kind of practitioner of any kind like that. But I do have some experience kind of with, mental stress and things like that. And, I would imagine that many people do, probably all of you. In the world we live in the modern world, it's really difficult to go through life and not have some kind of stress that creeps in and kind of begins to affect things. There's a helicopter. Cool. That's really the overarching point of this whole video. Like I said kind of in the intro episode, everything affects everything, and I do believe that. That means that the same environment, the toxins, the behaviors and stuff that we do that affect our physical health, our physical body, are also going to harm your mind, and the wellness of your body is going to be correlated with the wellness of your mind, as well as vice versa. I think it's kind of a cyclical relationship, which I'll demonstrate here. So this is probably obvious to you, but your body is not a bunch of separate pieces that are put together that all work separately, right? It's like the environment. It's a system, and all the parts are interconnected. They all work in tandem with each other. In the same way that brain damage from a stroke can, cause movement on one side of the body to be difficult or impossible, the mindset that you inhabit and the thoughts that you have, they can cause physical symptoms. When someone says, we need to talk, right? Everybody's heard that phrase, we need to talk. What happens to you? You get that pit, like in your chest, in your stomach. It kind of sinks down. It feels like you're gonna cave in on yourself a little bit. Just because you heard someone say, a phrase, or, someone says oh, I have bad news, or I need to tell you something. There's always that anticipation, and it makes you feel something. Your shoulders tense up, or you become suddenly you're super aware of how fast your heart's beating, or how hard you can hear it in your head or whatever. And it's not like this is a learned behavior. You didn't learn to feel this way when certain things happen. It just happens. You don't have to be taught to tense up whenever you feel anxious. It's just how things work. So since the thoughts in the subconscious mind affect how your body feels, it's hard for me to believe that it doesn't work the other way around too. That is, the body's going to affect how your mind feels, or how efficiently it works. And I could go into obvious examples like alcohol and caffeine, and how those can, things that you're consuming can affect how your mind works. But I want to talk about, since we're talking about mental health, two chemicals that are often associated with mental health, which is dopamine and serotonin. Serotonin levels, up until relatively recently, they've been thought to be the cause of depression. There is some evidence to the contrary that's kind of coming out recently, but what it is known is that it can affect your behavior, it can affect your neurological functions. And then dopamine is a chemical that is typically associated with enjoyment, right? So when you do something rewarding or fun, your body releases dopamine, which makes you feel good about having done that thing, right? And a lot of people are familiar with that, but what many people don't know, and this was a shock to me when I found this out, 90%, so almost all of the serotonin in your body is not in your brain, it's in your guts, right? So it's in down here, there's my t-shirt, it's down here, in your intestines and your stomach and those organs down there. Same goes for dopamine too, although the levels for dopamine, it's more like 50%. That's still a lot. Half the dopamine in your body, it's not in your brain, it's down here. So the question, I guess, is, what is this stuff doing in your gut when, as far as we know, it's your brain that does the thinking and the feeling, right? Well, it has something to do with the gut-brain axis, which is a relationship between your gut and your brain, which is, what it sounds like. And I'm going to put an image on the screen here in a minute. You have a nerve in your body that is called the vagus nerve. And we can take a look at this. If you look at, there's your brain at the top. Down at the bottom, you see kind of these nerve clusters, and you can see there's a ton of nerve endings clustered around in the gut area. So obviously, if we think about the serotonin, the dopamine that we were talking about, this is kind of the way that they could communicate. But, you know, I don't even want you to think about it in that kind of scientific explanation sort of way. I just want you to think about it in a simpler, like non-biochemistry way, okay? And that is this: your brain and your gut have a direct line of communication with each other. That's really all you need to know. Your brain and your gut talk to each other, and they talk to each other directly. And they're always talking to each other. That's what you got to remember. Another aspect to this that I thought was really interesting was they don't actually speak to each other at the same rate. So they're not sending signals to each other the same amount. And when you hear that, you might think, well, that, you know, probably your brain is the one sending the most amount of signals. It's actually the opposite. About 80%, again, the huge percentages, about 80% of the signals sent are from your gut to your brain. So your gut will send signals like, hey, I'm hungry, or actually I've eaten enough, you know, stuff like that. But again, we just established with the serotonin and dopamine, it's all hanging out down there. These mood altering or mood making chemicals, they're all in the gut, which is talking to the brain all the time. So now we can kind of bring it all around and connect everything here, because there's been a big increase over the past couple years and decades of antidepressant prescriptions. There's also been a large increase in inflammatory bowel diseases, things like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. I have some personal experience with these things also, which I'm probably going to make a video about later. It's going to be more like a diary entry. You probably don't have to watch that one. So anyway, given the increase in both of these things, it's hard to not draw the conclusion that, at least to a certain degree, you know, the physical degradation of what's happening in people's guts can be affecting the mental degradation of what's happening in their mind. This would have a lot of causes like diet and environment, which is kind of my big thing that I talk about. I've personally spoken to multiple psychiatric doctors, counselors, you know, therapists, things like that, and every single one of them have informed me that almost every person that they've met that has a gut issue, has an inflammatory bowel issue, they all deal with anxiety and depression. Almost 100% of the time, you know, and that's anecdotal evidence, but, you know, it's kind of hard to ignore anecdotal evidence when it keeps happening over and over again. You know, a bunch of anecdotes is called data, right? And that brings up the question, you know, does the anxiety cause the gut issues, or do the gut issues lead to the anxiety? You know, in my opinion, the answer is actually yes to both. You got to remember, this is just the relationship between your brain and one other part of your body, right? Like one other set of organs here. It's just the brain and the gut that we're talking about, and how that will affect things like anxiety, depression, stress, nervousness. You know, you got a bunch of other organs in there all doing all kinds of things and sending their signals to the brain, and the brain sending its signals to them, directly or indirectly. It's all interconnected. So again, this is just an overview. I hope to go over specifics of things like anxiety in the future. I hope this has kind of shown a light a little bit on the relationship between your body and mind. You know, when I say things like everything affects everything, I'm not just saying it as like a slogan or a catchphrase or whatever. It really is all connected. And it's kind of, you can demonstrate it when you look at stuff like this. And that's why I think the better we can make our environment, our diets, and our habits, you know, for our bodies, the better that's going to become for our mind. You know, the kinder we can be to our mind, the better our bodies are going to want to function. It's all going to be a cyclical relationship. If you can keep that cyclical relationship in sync, your entire body's going to function better, which of course means better health, better body composition, you know, lower body fat, less stress, so on and so forth. So thanks again for checking this out. As always, look forward to future content. I'm getting to the point where I want to get a little bit more in depth. I've been doing a lot of these kind of general overviews, but I want to kind of start getting into specific topics soon. So give me some input. I'll kind of see where I want to go with this. Even if you don't, even if no one watches this, this has kind of become my void to scream into. So I'm going to keep making these regardless. But yeah, so let me know what's up and stay safe. Have a good one.